The sky above SciFi had always been blue. It was a soft blue, like the color of water in shallow pools. The people loved their sky. They would sit in their gardens and watch the clouds move slowly across it. They grew their crops under that sky. They raised their children under it. They believed that sky would always be there to protect them. But on the morning when everything changed, the sky turned black. Elder Vel was standing in his garden when he saw the first ship. It was not like anything he had ever seen before. It was huge and dark, shaped like a blade cutting through the clouds. Behind it came more ships. 10, 20, 100. They blocked out the sun and cast shadows over the land. Vel had lived for 200 years. He had seen storms and droughts and hard winters, but he had never seen war. None of his people had. There were farmers and artists and teachers. They had no soldiers. They had no weapons. They had never needed them. For 500 years, the Galactic Accord had protected them. The Accord was a group of powerful alien races who promised to defend weaker worlds. They paid their tribute and followed the rules. In return, they were supposed to be safe. Vel ran to the communication tower at the center of his village. His old legs carried him as fast as they could. Others were already there, their large eyes filled with fear. They watched the ships descend toward the capital city in the distance. "Send the signal," Vel ordered. "Contact the Accord. Tell them we are under attack." The young operator worked quickly. His hands shook as he pressed the controls. The message went out across the stars, traveling faster than light itself. It reached every Accord station. It begged for help. Then they waited. The first soldiers landed 3 hours later. They were tall and covered in gray scales. Their eyes were yellow and cold like the eyes of dead fish. They carried weapons that shot beams of burning light. When they spoke, their voices were harsh and ugly. Commander led them. He was larger than the others, with scars across his face from old battles. He looked at them with disgust, the way someone might look at insects crawling in the dirt. "This world now belongs to the Empire," he announced. His voice echoed from speakers mounted on his soldiers. "You will work for us. You will serve us. Those who resist will die." Some tried to run. They shot them down without mercy. Others fell to their knees and begged. They laughed and put chains around their necks. Vel watched from a hill outside the village. Tears ran down his wrinkled face. He could see his people being dragged from their homes. He could hear their screams, but there was nothing he could do. He was old and weak. He had no power to fight monsters. Days passed. The Accord did not answer. Vel gathered the survivors he could find and led them to the underground caverns in the mountains. These caves had been used long ago for storage. Now they became hiding places. Hundreds of crowded together in the darkness. They had little food and less hope. They burned the cities. They destroyed the farms. They killed anyone who could not work. They were not conquerors who wanted to rule. They were destroyers who wanted to take everything and leave nothing behind. Weeks went by. The message to the Accord played on repeat, but no response ever came. Vel began to understand the terrible truth. The Accord had abandoned them. Maybe they were too busy with their own problems. Maybe they did not care about a small farming world. Maybe they were afraid of the... It did not matter why. All that mattered was that help was not coming. Young Myra was only 8 years old. She had lost her parents in the first attack. Now she stayed close to Elder Vel, holding onto his robe like it was the only safe thing left in the universe. Her eyes, once bright with curiosity, were now empty and tired. One night deep in the caves, Myra looked up at Vel. Her voice was small and broken. "Elder, will anyone come to save us?" Vel opened his mouth to answer. He wanted to lie. He wanted to give her hope, but he was too tired for lies. He looked away and said nothing. His silence was the answer of all. Myra did not cry. She had no tears left. She simply nodded and went back to staring at the stone walls. They began to die, some from hunger, some from sickness. Some simply gave up and stopped breathing. Every day there were fewer of them. Every day the darkness felt heavier. Vel prayed to the old gods. He begged them to send a miracle. He promised anything if they would just help his people survive. But the gods were silent, just like the Accord. What Vel did not know was that his message had not stopped at the edge of Accord space. It had traveled further, past the borders of known civilization, into a region that the older races called the Forbidden Zone. There, in a small yellow star system, a young species had been listening. They were new to space travel. They had only recently built ships that could cross the stars. The great empires of the galaxy thought of them as primitive and violent. They were not invited to join the Accord. They were not considered civilized. But they heard the screams in that message. They heard the fear. They heard a people dying and calling for help that never came. And something in them answered. Far away, on a blue planet called Earth, decisions were being made. Ships were being prepared. Soldiers were checking their weapons. A species that the galaxy had ignored was about to make itself known. They did not know it yet, but their prayers were about to be answered. Not by gods, not by the Accord, but by something the universe had never expected. Warriors were coming. And they were coming from Earth. The signal arrived on Earth at 3 in the morning. A young technician named Bin was the first to hear it. She was working the night shift at the Global Listening Station, a building hidden in the mountains where humans monitored signals from deep space. At first she thought it was just noise. Space was full of strange sounds, but then she heard the voices. They were not human voices. They spoke in a language she did not understand, but she understood the tone. It was the sound of terror. It was the sound of people dying. Bin contacted her superiors. Within an hour, translation programs were working on the message. Within 3 hours, the leaders of Earth were watching a recording that would change history. The video showed cities burning. It showed alien people being dragged through streets. It showed soldiers in gray armor shooting anyone who resisted. And at the end, there was an old alien face, wrinkled and full of sorrow, begging anyone who could hear to please send help. The United Terran Defense Council met in a secure room beneath the city of Seoul. 12 leaders from 12 nations sat around a long table. They represented all of humanity. They had the power to declare war or keep peace, and they had a decision to make. "This is not our fight," said the representative from Europe. He was an older man with cold eyes. "We do not know these people. We have no treaties with them. The Empire is powerful. We would be throwing lives away." "We barely have a fleet," added another leader. 3 ships that can travel between stars. 200 soldiers trained for space combat, against an empire that has conquered dozens of worlds. It is suicide. The room went quiet. Everyone knew these words were true. Humanity was young and weak compared to the great powers of the galaxy. They had no allies. They had no experience. Going to war would be foolish. Then a man in military uniform stood up. He was not old, but his face carried the weight of someone who had seen much suffering. His name was Wu, and he was the captain of the 1st Drop Battalion, humanity's first and only space combat unit. "May I speak?" he asked. The council leader nodded. Wu walked to the screen where the alien's face was frozen in fear. He looked at it for a long moment. Then he turned to face the council. "I have watched this message 12 times, he said. His voice was calm and steady. "Each time I see the same thing. I see innocent people being killed. I see a world being destroyed, and I see no one coming to help them." He paused and looked at each council member. "The Galactic Accord has ships. They have armies. They have the power to stop this, but they do nothing. They have decided that these people are not worth saving. They have decided that it is easier to look away." Wu's hands formed into fists at his sides. "I am a soldier. I have trained my entire life to protect people who cannot protect themselves. My soldiers feel the same way. We did not join the military to sit safely at home while innocents die. We joined to fight for those who need us." The European representative shook his head. "Captain, your courage is admirable, but think clearly. They will destroy your ships before you even reach the planet. You will die and nothing will change." Wu smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "With respect, sir, they do not know what humans can do. No one in the galaxy knows. We have never fought a war among the stars. We have never shown our true strength. They think they are the greatest warriors in the universe. They have never met us." A woman at the end of the table leaned forward. She was the representative from Korea, and she had served in the military before entering politics. Her name was Representative, and her eyes were sharp. "What exactly are you proposing, Captain?" Wu stood. "A rescue mission. We take our 3 ships and 200 soldiers. We drop onto the planet fast and hard before they can react. We hit them with everything we have. We break their control and free the survivors." "And if you fail?" asked another leader. "Then we die as soldiers fighting for something that matters, but we will not fail. My people are the best fighters Earth has ever produced. We have weapons they have never seen. We have tactics they cannot understand. And we have something they will never have." "What is that?" asked Representative. Wu looked at the alien face on the screen. "We have a reason to fight. Those people are counting on someone to save them. Everyone else has abandoned them, but we will not. That is what makes us human." The council debated for 3 more hours. Votes were cast and counted. In the end it was close, but the decision was made. The mission was approved. Wu walked out of the building and into the cold night air. His second-in-command, Lieutenant, was waiting for him. She was shorter than him but just as tough, with quick hands and a quicker mind. She specialized in explosives and had never met a problem she could not blow up. "Well," she asked, "are we going?" Wu nodded. "Get the team ready. We leave in 12 hours." Grinned. It was the kind of grin that made enemies nervous. "About time. The boys and girls are getting bored." They walked together to the barracks where the 1st Drop Battalion was waiting. These soldiers had trained for years in secret, preparing for a war that most people thought would never come. They had practiced fighting in zero gravity. They had learned to drop from orbit in small pods that fell like meteors. They were the sharpest blade humanity had ever forged. Sergeant Ho was checking his heavy repeater, a massive weapon that most soldiers could not even lift. He was a quiet man, tall and thick with muscle. He did not speak much, but when he did, people listened. Corporal was organizing medical supplies. She was the team's medic, trained to save lives in the worst conditions. Her hands were gentle, but her spirit was iron. She had seen death many times and had never let it break her. And in the corner, sitting alone, was Private Jin. He was the youngest of them, only 20 years old. He handled communications and technology. His fingers could hack any system, but his eyes still held the innocence of youth. He was scared, though he tried to hide it. Wu gathered them together. He told them about the mission. He told them about the risks. He told them that some of them might not come back. No one asked to stay behind. 12 hours later, 3 ships left Earth's orbit. They carried 200 soldiers into the unknown. They carried humanity's answer to a dying world's prayer. And as the stars stretched around them, Wu looked out the window and made a silent promise. "We are coming, hold on, we are coming." Commander was drinking when the alert came. He was sitting in his command tent, enjoying the finest food taken from the stores. The conquest had been easy. These weak farmers had offered no resistance. Now they worked in chains, and he grew fat on their suffering. "Commander," a soldier said, entering the tent, "our sensors have detected 3 ships approaching the planet." Barely looked up from his meal. 3 ships from where?" "Unknown, Commander. They came from outside Accord space. The ships are small and primitive. Our scans show basic technology, nothing that could threaten us." Laughed. It was an ugly sound like rocks grinding together. Send one cruiser to destroy them. Do not bother me with such small matters. The soldier bowed and left, returned to his food, already forgetting about the tiny ships that dared enter his space. 40 seconds later, his cruiser exploded. The blast was visible from the ground. A bright flash lit up the night sky, followed by falling pieces of metal that burned like shooting stars. Dropped his food and ran outside. He stared at the sky in disbelief. "What happened?" he screamed. "Report now." His officers scrambled to answer. Their voices were confused and scared. The data made no sense. The primitive ships had weapons that moved too fast to track. They had destroyed a warship with 3 shots. This was impossible. Nothing could destroy ships that quickly. Before could give new orders, the human ships entered the atmosphere. They came down at angles that should have torn them apart. They moved in patterns that broke every rule of flight. To the who had fought wars across the galaxy, it looked like madness. It was not madness, it was human creativity. The drop pods launched when the ships were still too high. 200 metal containers fell toward the surface, glowing red from the heat of entry. They looked like burning rain, like fire falling from heaven. The soldiers on the ground watched in shock. They had never seen anything like it. The pods hit the ground with thunder. They crashed into the perimeter around the capital city, throwing up clouds of dust and debris. Before the dust settled, the pods opened. And hell stepped out. Captain Wu was first out of his pod. He wore powered armor that made him look like a metal giant. In his hands was a rifle that fired solid metal at speeds they could not believe. His first shot took the head off an officer. His second and third killed 2 more. He was moving before they even hit the ground. All around him, his soldiers did the same. They moved with terrible speed and perfect coordination. Each one knew exactly where to go and what to do. They had practiced this 1,000 times in training. Now they did it for real. They fired back with their plasma weapons. Beams of burning light cut through the air, but the humans did not stop. They did not slow down. When they were hit, they kept fighting. When they fell, others took their place. They fought like animals, like demons, like nothing they had ever faced. Lieutenant reached the command bunker in the first 5 minutes. It was a thick building made of metal and stone, designed to survive bombardment. The inside felt safe. They were wrong. Placed charges on the walls with quick, expert hands. She moved back, pulled a trigger, and the bunker exploded outward. Stone and metal flew through the air. Soldiers stumbled out, burned and confused. Shot each one before they could raise their weapons. "Bunker clear," she said into her radio, moving to secondary target. On the other side of the city, Sergeant Ho was making his stand. 50 soldiers had surrounded his position. They thought their numbers would overwhelm him. They did not understand what they faced. Ho lifted his heavy repeater. It was a weapon designed to destroy vehicles, not soldiers. But Ho had other ideas. He opened fire. The gun roared like a beast. Bullets the size of fingers tore through armor like paper. Bodies fell in waves. They tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. Ho did not miss. He did not hesitate. When his weapon finally went silent, 30 lay dead. The others had fled. Private Jin stayed near the landing zone, working on his portable computer. His job was to cut the communications, to blind them and make them deaf. His fingers flew across the keys. One by one, the radio channels went dead. The enemy could not call for help. They could not coordinate. They were alone. "Communications are down," Jin reported. His voice was shaking, but he did not stop working. "They cannot talk to their fleet or each other." "Good work," Wu responded. "All units push forward, drive them to the center, no mercy." The battle lasted 4 hours. By the end, the streets were filled with bodies. Their weapons lay broken. Their flags were torn down. The occupation force that had seemed so powerful was destroyed. But the fighting was not finished. Commander had fled to his personal shuttle during the battle. He escaped to his command ship in orbit, his pride shattered, his face twisted with rage. He looked down at the planet where his soldiers lay dead and made a decision. If he could not have this world, no one would. "Prepare the orbital cannons," he ordered. "Burn it all." Back on the surface, the humans regrouped. They had won the ground battle, but they had taken losses. 12 soldiers were dead. 40 more were wounded. Corporal moved among them, treating injuries, giving comfort, saving lives where she could. She found Private Jin first. He was sitting against a broken wall, staring at the sky. His hands were still shaking. "Are you hurt?" she asked. He shook his head. "I have never seen anything like that, so much death." Put a hand on his shoulder. "You did well. Your work saved many lives. Hold on to that." Not far away, young Myra crawled out of a basement where she had been hiding. She saw the armored giant standing in the street. She saw the dead around them. She did not understand what had happened. One of the giants turned and saw her. Slowly, the giant knelt down. Hands reached up and removed a helmet. Underneath was a face, a human face, a woman with tired eyes and gentle smile. "It is okay," Corporal said softly. "We came to help. You are safe now." Myra's eyes filled with tears. For the first time in weeks, she felt something she thought was gone forever. Hope. But above them, in the darkness of space, Commander's finger moved toward a button, and the war was far from over. The warning came from Jin. He had connected to the network and could see what they were planning. His face went pale as the data appeared on his screen. "Captain," he said, his voice tight with fear, "the command ship is charging its orbital cannons. They are going to destroy the entire city. Everyone on the ground will die." Wu looked up at the night sky. He could not see the ship, but he knew it was there. A massive vessel filled with weapons powerful enough to turn mountains into dust. In 10 minutes, everything they had fought for would be ashes. "How long until they fire?" he asked. 8 minutes, maybe less. The soldiers around Wu exchanged looks. They had just survived the hardest battle of their lives. They were tired, wounded, and low on ammunition. And now they faced something worse. Lieutenant stepped forward. "We still have one transport ship in orbit. If we move fast, we could reach the command ship before they fire." "A boarding action?" Sergeant Ho asked. He was reloading his weapon, his face calm despite the situation. Against a ship that size, there must be hundreds of on board. "Probably more," agreed. "But what choice do we have? We cannot shoot it down from here. Our ground weapons are not strong enough. The only way to stop them is to get on that ship and take control." Wu was already moving toward the landing zone. "I need 30 volunteers. Everyone else stays here to protect the civilians. Corporal, you are in charge of medical. Keep our wounded alive." Nodded, but her eyes were worried. "Captain, be careful up there." He almost smiled. "I am always careful." That was a lie, and they both knew it. The transport ship was damaged but could still fly. Wu led his team aboard. 30 of his best soldiers, each one knowing they might not come back. Lieutenant was at his side. Sergeant Ho carried enough ammunition to fight a small war. Even Jin was there, his computer strapped to his back. "Jin, you should stay," Wu said. "This is not your kind of fight." The young man shook his head. "Someone needs to hack their systems. That is what I do. I am coming." There was no time to argue. The ship launched. From below, the remaining soldiers watched the transport rise into the sky. Corporal held Myra's hand. The little girl did not understand what was happening, but she could feel the fear around her. "Will they be okay?" Myra asked. Squeezed her hand. "They are the strongest people I know. If anyone can do this, it is them." In orbit, the transport approached the command ship. It was huge, bigger than anything humans had ever built. Its hull was covered with weapons and armor. It looked like a flying fortress, invincible and cold. But every fortress has a door. Jin found a maintenance hatch on the lower hull. It was meant for repairs, not for combat. They had never imagined someone would be crazy enough to enter through it. They were wrong. The transport attached to the hull. The humans cut through the hatch with torches. Air rushed out, but they were ready with sealed armor. One by one, they entered the enemy ship. The fighting started immediately. Guards responded to the breach, pouring into the corridor with weapons blazing. The humans met them with fire and fury. In the tight spaces of the ship, technology mattered less than courage, and humans had courage to spare. Ho went first. His heavy repeater was too large for the corridors, so he had switched to a shotgun that roared like thunder with every shot. Soldiers fell before him like grass before a storm. He did not slow down. He did not stop. Behind him, cleared side rooms with grenades and precise shots. Her movements were quick and deadly. She had studied the ship layouts during the flight and knew exactly where to go. Every corner, every door, every hiding spot. But they were not weak. They fought back hard. Soldiers fell on both sides. A human private took a plasma bolt to the chest and went down. Another was cut by a blade. The hallways filled with smoke and screams. Jin stayed in the middle of the group, working his computer even while running. He was shutting down doors, locking the out of certain areas, opening paths for his team. His fingers never stopped moving. Then it happened. They reached a large cargo bay. Elder Vel was there with a group of prisoners. They had been taking them to the ship as slaves. When the battle started, the guards had left them locked in cages. "Get them out," Wu ordered. Two soldiers ran to break the locks. Vel looked at the armored humans with wonder in his eyes. He did not know who they were or where they came from, but he knew they had come to save his people. A soldier appeared from a side door, weapon aimed at Vel's head. The old alien saw death coming and closed his eyes. The shot never reached him. Private Jin threw himself in front of Vel. The plasma bolt hit him in the side, burning through his armor and into his flesh. He fell with a cry of pain, his body smoking. Ho killed the soldier with a single shot. Then he ran to Jin, lifting the young man like he weighed nothing. "Medic," he shouted, but there was no medic here. They had left on the ground. Jin looked up at Wu. His face was pale, his breath coming in short gasps. "Did I save him, the old one?" Wu nodded. "You saved him, now stay with us. We are getting you home." The team pushed forward. They had to reach the bridge. They had to stop the cannon. They had 3 minutes left. The final corridor was the hardest. 50 soldiers stood between them and the bridge door. Commander's personal guard, the best fighters in the Empire. They were ready to die for their commander. Ho stepped forward. "I will hold them, you get to the bridge." "You cannot fight 50 alone," said. Ho loaded his last magazine. "Watch me." He charged. His weapon roared. They turned their fire on him and he kept coming. His armor cracked. His blood mixed with oil. But he did not fall. He created a path through the enemy line and his teammates rushed through. Wu reached the bridge door, blasted it open. Inside, Commander stood at the controls, his finger on the firing button. "You are too late," Human said. He was smiling, his yellow eyes bright with hate. "Watch your friends die." Wu moved faster than should have been possible. He crossed the bridge in 3 steps, drew his blade, a curved weapon that had killed hundreds. He swung at Wu with all his strength. The fight lasted 12 seconds. When it ended, was on the floor, his blade broken, his body still. Wu stood over him, breathing hard, his armor dented and burned, but alive. He looked at the control panel. The countdown had stopped with 1 second left. Behind him let out a long breath. That was close. Wu nodded. Then he pressed the communication button and spoke to the fleet. "This world is under Earth's protection. Leave now or join your commander." One by one, the ships turned and fled into the darkness of space. Below on the surface, Corporal watched the sky. She saw the command ship go silent. She saw the other vessels retreat. and she allowed herself to hope. They had won. Against all odds they had won. But the cost was high. When she finally saw Jin again, he was barely breathing. She worked through the night to save him, her hands steady even as her heart broke. He was so young, too young for war. But war had come anyway, and they had answered. The sun rose over SciFi for the first time in weeks without the shadow of ships blocking its light. The sky was blue again, soft and gentle like it had always been, but nothing else was the same. They came out of hiding slowly, like animals waking from a long winter. They looked at the ruins of their cities, the burned fields, the graves of their loved ones. Many of them wept. Many fell to their knees and could not stand again. The price of survival had been terrible. But they were alive. Against all hope, they were alive. Human soldiers moved through the streets, not as conquerors but as helpers. They shared their food with hungry children. They carried water to the sick and elderly. They helped clear rubble from homes that could still be saved. They asked for nothing in return. Corporal had not slept in 2 days. She moved from patient to patient, treating and humans alike. Her supplies were running low, but she stretched everything as far as it could go. Every life she saved felt like a small victory against the darkness. Private Jin lay in a makeshift hospital, tubes connected to his body, machines keeping track of his heart. The plasma bolt had done terrible damage, had operated for 6 hours to repair what she could. Now all she could do was wait. Myra visited him every day. She did not know his name or understand his language, but she knew he had saved Elder Vel. She sat by his bed and held his hand, her small fingers wrapped around his larger ones. She told him stories in her own language, hopping somehow he could hear. On the 3rd day after the battle, Jin opened his eyes. Was there immediately, checking his vitals, asking him questions. He was weak, barely able to speak. But when he saw Myra sitting beside him, he managed a small smile. "Did we win?" he whispered. Smiled back, tears in her eyes. "We won. You are going to be okay." Across the city, Captain Wu stood in the central square. They had gathered there to thank the humans who had saved them. Hundreds of pale, tired faces looked up at him with something like worship. He did not want their worship. He just wanted to go home. Elder Vel walked toward him, moving slowly, leaning on a wooden staff. He was even older than before, aged by sorrow and fear. But there was light in his eyes again, hope that Wu had helped put there. "Human Captain," Vel said. His voice was rough but clear. "I must ask you something. I must understand." Wu nodded. "Ask." "Why?" Vel's eyes searched his face. "Why did you come? You do not know us. You have no duty to protect us. The Accord, who promised to guard us for 500 years, did nothing. But you came from across the stars to die for strangers. Why?" Wu was quiet for a long moment. He thought about the question. He thought about all the reasons the council had given, all the strategies and politics and fears. None of them seemed to matter now. "Because someone should have," he finally said. "Because you needed help and we could give it. That is enough reason." Vel stared at him. Then slowly the old alien bowed his head. It was the deepest sign of respect in culture, an honor reserved for the greatest heroes. All around the square, others did the same. Wu felt uncomfortable with the attention. He had lost good soldiers. He had made decisions that cost lives. He did not feel like a hero, but he accepted their thanks with grace. Later that day, a message arrived from the Galactic Accord. Their ambassadors were coming to SciFi. They offered formal apologies for their failure to respond. They promised that such a tragedy would never happen again. They wanted to discuss increased protection for the people. Elder Vel listened to the message. Then he turned it off and looked at the humans around him. "Tell them no," he said. "Tell them we have found new protectors. Tell them we do not need their promises anymore." The Accord ambassadors came anyway. They were tall, elegant beings from ancient races, dressed in fine robes and speaking with careful words. They were shocked to find humans on the planet. They were even more shocked when Vel refused to meet with them. "You abandoned us," Vel told them through a human translator. "When we screamed for help, you were silent. When we died, you looked away. Now you come with apologies and empty words. Keep them. We want nothing from you." The ambassadors left, their faces dark with confusion and wounded pride. They had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. They had never been dismissed by a species they considered their inferiors. News of the battle spread quickly. Every species in the galaxy heard the story of HFY. They heard how a young, unknown species called humans had crossed empty space to save strangers. They heard how 200 soldiers had defeated an occupation force. They heard how a human captain had killed commander in single combat and claimed the planet under Earth's protection. Some species felt fear. If humans could do this, what else were they capable of? What would happen when they grew stronger? Others felt hope. For too long, the great powers had ignored the suffering of weaker worlds. Now there was a new voice in the galaxy, a species that fought for those who could not fight for themselves. The human soldiers prepared to leave. Their mission was complete, but there was no celebration. Too many had died. Too many were still healing. They loaded their ships in silence, carrying the bodies of their fallen friends home for burial. Myra stood at the edge of the landing zone, watching them go. She had learned a few words of their language during the past week. Now she practiced them in her head, wanting to say them right. Corporal walked past, carrying supplies. Myra ran to her and pulled on her sleeve, stopped and knelt down, her tired face softening. "Thank you," Myra said in careful, practiced English. "Thank you for coming." Hugged her gently. "Take care of yourself, little one. We will be watching over you." Captain Wu was last to board his ship. He turned and looked at the one more time. They stood in a long line watching him go. Some waved, some bowed, some simply stood in silent gratitude. He raised his hand in farewell. Then he stepped inside and the doors closed behind him. The ships rose into the sky, climbing through the blue atmosphere toward the stars. They watched until they disappeared. Then they began the long work of rebuilding their world. Years passed. Myra grew up strong and healthy. She became a teacher, telling the story of Earth's warriors to every new generation. Her children learned it. Their children would learn it too. The story would never be forgotten. On Earth, the returning soldiers were treated as heroes. Parades filled the streets. Songs were written about their bravery. But Wu refused all medals and honors. He said the mission was not finished. There were other worlds out there, other people who needed help, other battles worth fighting. The galaxy was vast and dangerous. There would always be tyrants and conquerors. There would always be innocent people crying out for someone to save them. And now they knew that someone might answer. Somewhere in the darkness between stars, a message was always traveling. It carried a simple promise, written in the actions of soldiers who had crossed the void for strangers. When all hope is lost, when the powerful turn away, when darkness closes in and no one else will come, look to the sky. Earth's warriors are watching, and they will answer.